Hey guys, it's Eddie, your Muay Thai instructor. Last video I covered the jab. I know it was a bit lengthy. I anticipate that will be the longest video I ever put out. Don't quote me on that. But I just want all the content that I put out to be as extensive as possible to answer all the questions you guys have at home. With that being said, today's lesson is going to be the cross, meaning it's coming from your rear hand. So let's get started. All right, guys, so the cross is definitely meant to hurt the person that you throw this at. It's meant to be thrown with destructive capabilities. That doesn't mean with reckless intent. We definitely have to be controlled. With that said, it's definitely the strike that's meant to knock somebody out. I'm going to break this video into two segments, kind of like I did with the jab. I'm going to break it down from the lower half and then the upper half. All right, guys, so as I fire my right hand or my rear hand, doesn't matter, southpaw, coming from the backside, it's crossing across, hence why it's called the cross. I want to load up on my rear leg. My rear leg is going to be the catalyst of power. Typically, it's going to be coupled with something, meaning I just threw a jab, I just threw a hook, I just threw an uppercut, and all my weight is transferred to the back of my leg, so I can easily push off this, lift my left leg, and then drive out. It's going to be the same as that jab where I'm pointing my toe, except for instead of it facing outward, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn it inward. So I'm going to step and I'm going to turn my foot so both my lead leg is pointing at my opponent and my rear leg is turning towards them as well. Now, small disclaimer. The reason why I stated in my jab that it would be a little bit tricky and sometimes I contradict myself is that a lot of mistakes that I see people that have been doing this for about 6 months to a year is that they'll throw the jab or they'll throw the hook and they'll leave this right here and they'll throw the cross from this position. And when they throw the cross from this position, as they turn, they won't have enough room to turn their hip and they'll crash into their lead leg. And what will tend to happen is they'll be a little bit narrow. And even though my feet aren't staggered, if I were to hit resistance, even if I'm leaning forward, I'm going to tend to push myself back. So it's very important that as I fire this right leg, I kick this lead leg out in a diagonal fashion so I have room to turn and have room to sit down on my leg. One more time. So I'm going to load up nice and heavy. I'm going to push off my right leg and turn my foot. All it really is essentially a glorified lunge where, again, my lead foot is pointing at the person and I'm turning my foot as needed. What I mean by as needed is if I'm punching through and I win and I drive them back, I want to continue to turn as much as possible to get as much length as possible. Getting that 45-degree angle met with resistance. But if I turn and I happen to make contact about here, I'm not going to need to get that last drive. That's okay too, because again, it stops as needed. Nice solid cross, ideally, all the way through. All right, so for the upper part, I want you to imagine that your right hand is carrying a bowling ball, like a 15-pound bowling ball. And, you know, 15 pounds doesn't sound very heavy. And when you're carrying it, you know, you could probably strongman it for a couple of rounds, you know, probably a game of bowling, no problem. You're carrying it out, you're talking with your friends, throw the thing out, no problem. But as you play 2, 3, 4 games, that ball starts to become a little bit more heavier, right? You've been throwing that ball pretty hard, you've been trying to get them strikes. As you extend it, your arm is gonna get tired. Same thing. You're gonna be throwing this thing as hard as you can, somewhat pretty often. Especially when you're training, you're drilling, you're hitting pads, you're gonna be throwing this pretty often. So it's really important that you carry your right hand as close to you as possible so all the weight is transferred onto your body. You want to carry it with your body and put as little strain as possible on your right shoulder. So I'm going to carry it as so, and as I start to turn, there's a small kinetic chain that almost acts like a whip. It's going to be pushing off my right foot, and the moment my right hip turns, it's going to, that's my 4-year-old, it's going to activate my upper body as well. It's going to hit my elbow, it's going to engage my shoulder. At the same time, right about here is when my right arm starts to become involved. So turning my foot right about here when I hit about square, upper body's involved. then I'm going to start to worry about my right hand. Now, when I say carrying a bowling ball, a lot of things that new people will tend to do is they'll flare out their arm and they'll tend to bench press their punch, meaning that it's going to come out from here and they'll do this giant big motion and it'll feel really powerful. You can throw a powerful punch from there, but as the later rounds start to go or as you start to fatigue, it'll start to almost look like that. And you'll start to telegraph. People will start to see it. People will see it from coming from far away and they'll block it. It'll come with less force. You'll start to tire out and you'll become less accurate. There's a lot of problems that come with flaring out your elbow and bench pressing it. So keep your right hand tucked in. You can become very accurate and it's very minimal because you're doing it with your body. So I turn right here and all I'm going to do is extend almost like a jab as straight as possible without hyperextending. Right about here. I'm going to almost point my elbow to the sky. This is an over-exaggerated version, but for new people, I almost recommend this way because it'll get your shoulder to turn across and touch your cheek. If you're relatively seasoned, you can still get this trick without turning your elbow all the way and just throwing it straight, looking down the sights of your knuckle. Right here. Now, I want my shoulder to clear right around my ear level for defensive capabilities or defensive responsibility. So, left hand is up to covering, right hand is extended. I'm looking down the first two knuckles for accuracy, and as I look down the sights, it gets my chin down and it gets the shoulder up and across. Carrying it from right here, straight. I can fire this as often as possible, as hard as possible. The more tired I get, the more conscious I need to be of not carrying the weight of my arm. Boom. Now, as I want to add power, and as I get that full length of extension and I'm piecing together my feet and my hands, as I start to win the timing of the punch, I almost want to prick down just a tad bit to drive. I'm going to push down with my knuckles, and as I push down with my knuckles, I'm going to point my toe extra. Bah. Now, when I say this, there is some disclaimer. A lot of people will tend to slap the bag out of the psychology of hitting or punching. Meaning, I want to throw it really fast and come back, and what will tend to happen will be this. I will slap it. It'll be impactful, and it can hurt and it can do damage because timing is king on everything. But I want to punch through my opponent. And what I mean by that is think of the punch as a really fast push. I don't want to just stop when I'm making contact. I want to continue to drive through. I need to expect resistance. So when I see this target, whether it be someone's face, it be someone's thigh pad, if you're working on the thigh pad, it's the perfect example. I need to see the person's arm almost lean back every single time I throw this punch. I don't want to just slap and hit the target and for them to brace themselves as the punch is coming. I need to drive through and really push and anticipate their weight. Extend. Push really fast is probably the best advice that I could give. All right, so my 4-year-old is asking if I'm done talking. Obviously, I've repeated myself quite a bit, and I've made this video also pretty long. But I hope I've covered everything. If there's any questions or anything that I've missed, please comment down below. I hope to be a little bit more interactive and answer most of your questions. With that said, please have a great day. Sweaty